Gideon is a hero of the faith. It's not a title that he would have taken on himself. He is an unlikely hero, but a hero nonetheless. He's a hero to people who have more questions than answers about faith. He's a hero to people who lack confidence and need constant reassurance. He is a hero to people who are scared and who are looking for help to deal with their fears. And so he wouldn't necessarily have taken this title on himself, but Gideon is a hero of the faith. And the world in which Gideon lives looks very different from our world, but underneath some of the issues that he's having to deal with are not a million miles away from some of the questions and issues that are alive for us today. We first meet Gideon when he is threshing wheat in a winepress, hidden, trying to do it in secret because he is afraid of the raiding parties that are coming from the nations around about to steal the food that Israel is growing. And so he is afraid, his people are afraid, his people are poor and oppressed because these raiding parties come to take away the food that the people of Israel are growing for themselves. So he lives in a world that's violent. It's a world where issues are sorted by battles and physically fighting each other. It's a world where some are oppressed by others, and Gideon and his people are poor and hungry because others are more powerful. And God calls Gideon to be the man to sort this out. Now, Gideon has more questions than answers, and there's nothing wrong with that. Gideon needs lots of reassurance, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And God calls Gideon to go, and Gideon goes. The centre of Gideon's story is a battle. And again, armies have come from the nations around about to hoover up as much food as they can from the people of Israel. And Gideon calls around to raise an army, and 32,000 men respond to the call. And I suspect Gideon looks at that army, big as it is, and says, we need a bigger army. We need more people, because this fight is huge. And yet God tells Gideon to reduce the army, and goes about reducing the 32,000 men to 300. And so with 300 men, each armed with a trumpet, a clay pot and a torch, Gideon goes to fight. And in the middle of the night, these 300 men cause absolute chaos, absolute mayhem, and so this huge army that they're fighting against is absolutely terrified, and they run away because of the mayhem that Gideon and his 300 men have caused. And so Gideon wins the day, and he is able to live out his days in peace and old age as he continues to lead his people and be the one whom God has called to be their leader. Now, Gideon knows his limitations, and I suspect that's one of the key notes of Gideon's character. He knows his limitations, and he has a humility about him that sometimes gets in the way, but he has learned also to trust God. God makes a promise to be with Gideon and to help him, as well as calling him to be a leader. And Gideon learns to trust that promise, and it takes a while, and it's through experience as well as just listening to the promise. But Gideon learns to trust God and to know that what God has promised, God will do. COVID times make us afraid. They sap our confidence. They make us very aware of our limitations and the things that we can't sort. But that same promise that God made to Gideon still stands for us. The Lord is with you. And we learn to trust that promise too. Or at least that's the challenge for us in these times when we are afraid and anxious. Gideon, for all his limitations, for all his fear, for all his humility, learned to trust God in some really difficult times and difficult situations. And that makes Gideon a hero of the faith.